My dad pushed my 9-year-old daughter at the Christmas table. "That seat is for my real grandkid. Get out!" She hit the floor in front of the whole family, but everyone stayed silent. I didn't cry. I said 4 words. My mom dropped her wine glass. My dad went pale. The sound of my daughter's knee hitting the floor wasn't the worst part. It was the way everyone went quiet. Not the normal quiet you get when someone says, "Let's say grace," and everyone pretends they aren't already chewing. This was the kind of silence that has weight, like a blanket, like a verdict. I'm Leah. I'm a single mom, which means I've perfected 2 skills: pretending I'm fine and carrying way too much in one trip. I used to think I could handle my family as long as I stayed small enough, smile enough, apologize for taking up air. Christmas Eve at my parents' house was my annual reminder that staying small is still taking up too much space if the wrong person decides you don't belong. The dining room looked like a catalog got into a fistfight with a nutcracker. Garland on everything. Candles that smelled like winter pine, which is a polite name for tree sap and lies. My sister Chelsea had insisted on matching sweaters. Hers was cute, of course. Mine looked like I'd lost a bet. My daughter Maisie kept tugging the sleeves of hers down over her hands because she was 9 and the sweater was made for a child Chelsea described as a petite angel. Translation: not my kid. At the head of the table, my dad held court the way he always did, fork like a scepter, his laugh big and loud and a little too pleased with itself. Chelsea's daughter Poppy was perched in the seat closest to him, the one everyone treated like holy ground. The seat that always ended up with the best plate and the first refill. The seat that somehow belonged to family more than the rest of us did. Poppy is 5. Blonde curls, big eyes, and a talent for getting what she wants with a single sigh. Everyone calls her Grandpa's girl, like that's a title you can win. Maisie watched all of it with the careful face of a kid who's learned to read rooms before books. It makes you proud, and it breaks your heart at the exact same time. Dad's mood had been festive. That's the nicest way to say it. He'd made one of his little comments when I walked in. "Well, look who made it," he said, like I'd shown up to a party I wasn't invited to. I smiled anyway, because that's what you do when you're trained. Smile. Make it easy. Don't give him a reason. Then at dinner, he started in with the jokes. "Blood's thicker than eggnog," he said, lifting his glass toward Chelsea like they were sharing a private punchline. Chelsea laughed too hard. Mom laughed too quietly. Aunt Linda laughed like she was paid by the chuckle. Maisie didn't laugh. She just kept her hands folded in her lap, like she'd learned that laughter could be used against you. I clocked it, swallowed it, kept my eyes on my daughter. And then, because my family loves tradition, we got to the part where everyone pretends it's normal. Maisie stood up with her little paper place card. Chelsea had made them, with glitter and everything, and she walked toward the table with this small, hopeful smile. She wasn't trying to steal anyone's crown, she just wanted to sit down. She wanted to be included, like kids do, before the world teaches them that belonging is something you have to earn. She got close to the special seat, not even because she wanted it, because Chelsea had put her card there, which is almost funny, in a dark way, like the universe has a wicked sense of timing. Dad saw the card, saw Maisie's hand, saw her about to pull out the chair, and something in his face snapped. "That seat is for my real grandkid," he barked. Maisie froze. The smile fell off her face so fast it was like someone pulled a string. "Get out," Dad added, like my 9-year-old had tried to rob him, and then he shoved her. Not a gentle nudge, not a move along, a shove. A grown man's hand on a child's shoulder, pushing her back like she was a problem to be solved. Maisie stumbled. Her foot caught the rug. Her knee hit the hardwood with a sound that made my stomach flip. And then, silence. Forks paused midair. Someone's napkin fell. Aunt Linda made a tiny, Oh, like Maisie had spilled a drink, not been shoved to the floor. Chelsea didn't move. She just stared like this was a scene in a show she hadn't asked to watch, but might still enjoy. Mom's face went blank. Practiced. Like she'd been training for this exact moment her whole life. My daughter looked up at me, not crying yet, just confused, like her brain couldn't make the math work. I was already moving before I realized I was moving. I helped her get up. Her body was tense, vibrating with shock. Her knee was already turning red. Her breath hitched in tiny little bursts. Her fingers latched onto my sleeve like she needed something solid. I glanced around the table. 20-something people. Adults. Family. Witnesses. Not one person stood up. Not one person said, "What the hell is wrong with you?" Not one person reached toward my daughter. Not even my mother. My ears rang. My vision tunneled. And then, in the middle of that ringing, a thought landed in my head with perfect, icy clarity. This ends. I leaned down close to Maisie and murmured, "I've got you," because I needed her to hear at least one adult in that room say something true. Then I reached down with my free hand and grabbed my bag. I didn't make a speech. I didn't ask for permission. I didn't wait for anyone to suddenly grow a spine. I pulled out a folder and set it on the table in front of my parents, right between the cranberry sauce and the lie they'd been feeding me my entire life. I looked at my dad, then my mom, and I said 4 words. "You've been served." For a second, nobody moved. Not even my father. Then his hand went to the folder like it belonged to him, the same way everything else in that house always did. He flipped it open. His eyes scanned the first page. My mother was still holding her wine glass, frozen halfway between the table and her mouth, like time might pause if she didn't blink. Then my father's face drained of color, and my mother's wine glass slipped from her fingers and hit the table with a sharp, ugly clink before tipping over. My father wasn't angry pale. Not, "How dare you, pale." Pale like recognition. Pale like fear. Then I walked out with my daughter, and behind me, for the first time all night, the silence broke. Not with comfort, with panic. To understand why I had that folder in my bag, you need to know what my life has looked like in their house. Because people love to ask questions like, "Why didn't you just cut them off?" As if family is a light switch. As if you can just flick it off and walk away without hearing their voices in your head for the next decade. Growing up, my sister Chelsea was sunlight. I was weather. Chelsea got praised. I got corrected. Chelsea got, "You're such a star." I got, "Don't be so sensitive." Chelsea got, "Come sit by me." I got, "Move, you're in the way." Dad's favorite trick was saying the cruel thing like it was a joke. Like if he smiled while he said it, it didn't count. "Where'd you get that hair?" he'd say when I was a teenager. "Must have been the mailman." Everyone would laugh the way people laugh when they're terrified of being the next target. Mom would give me that look that meant, "Don't start. Don't make this worse. Don't ruin dinner." Chelsea became the proof my dad wanted. Proof the marriage was fine. Proof he wasn't being played. Proof he was the kind of man who could produce a real daughter. I became the question mark. My dad never got a test. That would have required admitting he might be wrong. Much easier to punish me for the suspicion and call it righteousness. And my mother let him. That's the part people don't understand until they've lived it. A father can be cruel because he's cruel. A mother has to decide over and over to watch it happen. My grandfather, Dad's father, was the only person on that side who made me feel like I belonged. He wasn't warm exactly. He was one of those old-school men who thought emotions were for people who didn't have work to do. But he'd pat my shoulder and say, "You're smart. Don't let anyone dull that." He'd slip me a card on my birthday with a crisp bill inside and tell Chelsea loudly to stop spending money like it was a hobby. When he died, the house shifted. Not with grief, with ownership. Dad became in charge of everything. Papers, accounts, decisions. I was told, very casually, that there wasn't anything set aside for me. That's the phrase Mom used. Like she was talking about leftovers. There wasn't anything set aside, she said, eyes on the kitchen counter, voice flat. Like she was reading from a script. I believed her. Or I tried to, because the alternative was admitting that my parents could look at me and decide I was not worth honesty. And then, 2 weeks before Christmas, I babysat Poppy, the golden grandchild, the one who gets the seat, the first cookie, the special plate. Chelsea had texted me, "Can you watch Poppy for an hour? I have a work call." Work call. Sure. Chelsea works from home in the same way I do yoga when I stretch for the remote. I said yes because Poppy is 5 and she likes me in the way kids like adults who don't make them audition for affection. Also because I'm still infected with that old family disease. Maybe if I'm useful, they'll treat me better. Chelsea left. The house was quiet. Poppy played with dolls. I cleaned up wrapping paper because apparently my role in that family is helper, not person. Chelsea's laptop sat closed on the coffee table. Asleep. Innocent. Not my business. Poppy, however, saw it like a shiny forbidden toy. She flipped it open like she'd done it 100 times. The screen glowed. A password box popped up. And Poppy, tiny fingers, serious face, typed the password. Like it was her name. Like it was a game. I froze, because kids don't know passwords unless someone lets them. I walked over and said gently, "Hey, sweet pea, that's not a toy." I reached to close it. And that's when the laptop woke up fully. A PDF popped back onto the screen like the computer had been holding its breath, and right at the top, in bold letters, was my grandfather's name. I stopped breathing. I sat down. Not because I was being nosy, because my body understood something before my brain did. This matters. I skimmed fast and focused. The way you read when you're afraid of what you'll find, but more afraid of what you already suspect. There were headings, official-looking ones. Trust. Beneficiaries. My throat tightened, and then I saw it. My full legal name. Not a nickname. Not Leah, maybe. Not other child. My name. Printed. Clean. Undeniable. I scrolled again. Carefully. Like if I moved too fast, the truth would disappear. A page titled Distribution Summary was half visible. One line jumped out at me because it had a date I remembered in my bones. The month I'd asked for help with a deposit on a safer apartment after a break-in. The month Dad had laughed and said, "You should have made better choices." The month Mom had shrugged and said, "We can't." That same month, Chelsea had suddenly announced she was so blessed and bought a new SUV. I stared at that line until the numbers blurred. Then I did the only smart thing I've ever learned to do in that family. I took a photo. Just one. Clear. Trust name. My name. The part that mattered. I closed the laptop. Poppy asked if she could watch cartoons. I smiled at her like my world hadn't just tilted. "Yes, honey," I said. "Pick one." That night, after Chelsea came home and chirped, "Everything fine?" I said yes, because I needed time. And because confronting people like my parents without a plan is like walking into a hurricane with an umbrella. 2 days later, I sat across from a woman named Rebecca Shaw in a small law office that smelled like coffee and competence. I slid my phone across the desk. Rebecca studied the photo for all of 5 seconds before her expression changed. Not shock, not confusion. Recognition. The kind of look you give when you've seen this pattern before. If your name is on it, she said, voice calm, trustees don't get to decide you don't count. I swallowed. Even if they think whatever they think, Rebecca cut in. Ink beats opinions. I didn't call my parents. I didn't ask Chelsea. I didn't clear the air. I let Rebecca do what she does, quietly. And when Rebecca handed me a folder a few days later, I didn't open it in the parking lot like a movie character. I sat in my car and stared at it like it was a bomb. Because it was. Not the explosive kind, the life-changing kind. For days, that folder lived in my bag. I took it out, put it back, took it out, put it back. I told myself, after the holidays, not at Christmas, not in front of everyone. Don't be dramatic. Don't ruin things. I told myself I could get through one more dinner. I told myself I could keep the peace. And then my father put his hands on my child, and waiting stopped being a choice. Maisie was quiet in the car. Not the normal quiet where she's plotting how to convince me that dessert counts as a food group. This was the kind of quiet that scares you as a parent because you can hear your child's little brain trying to build meaning around something that should never have happened. Her knee was starting to puff up. She sniffed hard, like she was trying not to cry, like crying would make her a problem. I hated them for that, for teaching her that. I kept my voice gentle. Hey, look at me. You didn't do anything wrong. She stared out the window. He doesn't like me. My throat tightened. That's about him, baby. Not you. Maisie's voice got smaller. Is it because I'm not real? There it was. The poison. Passed down like an heirloom. I pulled the car over for a second because I needed my hands steady. No, I said, and I made the word a wall. You are real. You belong with me. Always. She nodded like she wanted to believe me, like belief was a thing she had to earn. I drove the rest of the way home with my jaw clenched so hard my teeth hurt. Now, because I know some of you are already asking, what was in the folder? Here it is. The payoff. The thing I didn't explain at the table because my family doesn't deserve speeches. That folder wasn't a threat. It was legal service. It was a court petition to force a full accounting of my grandfather's trust. Every dollar in, every dollar out, every signature, every transfer. It asked the court to freeze further distributions until the truth was on paper where nobody could forget it. It asked to remove my parents as the people controlling it, because what I'd found wasn't confusion. It was diversion. It included exhibits, my name on the trust, the distribution lines that matched the sudden miracles in Chelsea's life, and the trust administrator information so nobody could pretend it was fake. And that cover page? That's why my father went pale. Because he recognized it. Because he knew exactly what he'd been doing. Because he knew I wasn't guessing. I was done. My phone started ringing before I even pulled into my driveway. Chelsea first, then Mom, then Dad. Over and over. Chelsea left a voicemail that was half rage, half panic. What did you do? Are you insane? You're ruining everything. Mom's voicemail was a sobbing whisper. Leah, please, please don't do this. Think about... As if I hadn't been thinking about my child's knee hitting hardwood. Dad's voicemail was cold. No yelling, no theatrics. Just this. You're not taking anything from this family. I didn't call back. I got Maisie settled on the couch in her leggings and an old hoodie, pressed an ice pack to her knee, and made cocoa with extra marshmallows because sometimes parenting is just knowing when to add sugar to pain. We watched a Christmas movie on the couch, Maisie tucked against my side like she was afraid the world might shove her again if she moved. My phone kept buzzing. Family group chat. Exploding. Aunt Linda. How could you do this on Christmas? A cousin I barely spoke to. I saw what happened. Are you okay? Chelsea. Posting pictures of Poppy sitting in the special seat with a caption like it was cute, like it was normal. And then the smear started. Chelsea posted on Facebook, "Some people will destroy a family for money." No names, just enough for everyone to point. People reacted with little heart emojis like betrayal was inspirational content. My aunt messaged me, "You've always been dramatic, Leah." My uncle wrote, "Call your father and apologize." Nobody wrote, "Is Maisie okay?" That told me everything I needed to know about the family I'd been trying to keep. Then my dad sent one text that was meant to scare me into silence. A message that had been sitting in his back pocket my whole life, waiting for a moment where it would hurt the most. "You want court? Fine. Tell the judge why you should be getting my father's inheritance if you're not even mine." My stomach flipped. Not because I believed him, because I knew what he was trying to do. He wasn't defending money. He was defending his right to punish, and he was going to try to drag my daughter into it too. I stared at the text until my hands stopped shaking. Then I looked down at Maisie, asleep on the couch, and I whispered, to her and to myself, "He doesn't get to write our story anymore." 2 days after Christmas, Rebecca Shaw forwarded me a PDF titled Response Plus Motion. Nothing like opening your inbox and finding a document that sounds like a sci-fi sequel. Response 2. Motion harder. I was standing in my kitchen in yesterday's sweatshirt, watching Maisie eat cereal like nothing in the world had happened, because that's what kids do when they're trying to be brave. She was 9. She wasn't crying anymore. She was doing that quiet thing where children decide emotions are dangerous because adults act like they are. My phone buzzed again. Rebecca texted, "Open it. Call me when you're on page 2. Page 2 was where they went for my throat. Not just the real grandchildren nonsense. Though yes, that was there, bolded like a slogan on a billboard. They were asking the court to dismiss my petition and sanction me for bad faith and harassment. Sanction. Like I was a misbehaving dog. I could practically hear my father narrating, "See? Even the judge thinks you're dramatic." My stomach dropped so hard I had to lean on the counter. Rebecca called before I could. "Leah," she said, voice calm in that way people are calm when they've seen this movie and already know the ending. "They're going to try to make this about whether you're real family. Don't take the bait." My throat tightened. They're really doing this. "They're desperate," she said. "Desperate people throw sand." I swallowed. "If he says I'm not his, should we do a test?" There was a pause, just long enough for my shame to try to crawl up my neck. Then Rebecca said, "Not for court, not for them. Your name is on the trust. Trustees don't get to rewrite it based on suspicion." I stared at Maisie, who was carefully lining up her spoon and bowl like she could make the morning behave if she made the objects behave. "I don't know if I wanted the truth," I said quietly. Rebecca had me come in that afternoon. She slid a printout toward me. "Initial snapshot from the trust administrator," she said. I read the top line and my ears went hot. Trust principal at grandfather's death. $480,000. The next line made me blink. Intended split. 50% Leah and 50% Chelsea. I sat back hard in the chair. "My share," my voice cracked. I cleared my throat. "So, $240,000. Rebecca nodded once. Then she tapped the bottom line. "Current trust balance, $38,000. My brain refused to accept it for a full second, like it was waiting for someone to laugh and say, "Just kidding." "That can't be right," I whispered. Rebecca didn't flinch. "It's right. Now we show the court how it happened." She slid a page titled "Distributions Trustee Approved" across the desk. It wasn't the whole file, just the highlights. Enough to make me sick. Not enough to pin it on paper. Not yet. And then I saw where my life went. Not in a poetic way, in a line item way. We didn't go through every single transaction because nobody needs a 90-minute documentary about my parents' creativity with other people's money. Rebecca highlighted the big ones, the kind that tell a story even if you don't understand finance. Chelsea's down payment, a vehicle purchase, medical, education. The categories were almost insulting. Like if you label theft family support, it becomes wholesome. "They told me they couldn't help me," I said, and I heard myself the way you hear your own voice on a recording. Too calm, too controlled, like if I let the emotion out it would drown me. Rebecca didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't say that's awful. She didn't perform empathy. She handed me the reality like a weapon. "They took money earmarked for you," she said, "and spent it like a family slush fund." I looked down at my highlighted name on the trust paperwork, my name printed in clean black ink, like it had always been real, like it had always been there. And that's when my phone buzzed with a text from Aunt Linda. "Why are you doing this to your father?" I stared at it and actually laughed, a single sharp sound. "Because sure, Linda, I'm doing this. Not the people who moved hundreds of thousands of dollars like it was loose change." That week, Maisie asked me something while I was brushing her hair. "Do I have to say sorry?" The question landed like a punch. "Sorry for what?" She stared at her own reflection like she didn't want to see herself too clearly. "For making Grandpa mad." I set the brush down. "No," I said, and I made it firm enough to become a floor under her feet. "You don't apologize for someone else hurting you." Her shoulders eased like she'd been carrying that thought around in her backpack. That night, I made a decision I should have made years ago. No visits, no calls, no surprise drop-bys. Boundaries so hard you could trip over them. They stole my money. They don't get my daughter, too. The first hearing happened fast. Emergency, preservation, freeze. The kind of court appearance where you don't wear your cute outfit. You wear something that says, "I am here to be taken seriously, and also I own an iron." Janine Keller, my parents' attorney, walked in like she owned the building. Ms. Keller was polished and bright-eyed, smiling with her teeth but not her soul. She argued real grandchildren. She argued intent. She argued family understanding. Rebecca asked for two things: preserve records, freeze movement. The judge granted both and set a deadline for the full file. Every statement, every transfer record, and the trustee approvals behind them. My father's jaw tightened. Chelsea's eyes flicked to him. My mother stared at the table. On the walk out, my father finally looked at me, like he was trying to decide if I was his daughter or his enemy, and I thought dryly, "Bold time to start considering the relationship, Dad." Maisie was quiet when I got home. Not, "I'm fine," quiet. The other kind. The kind where a kid is trying to decide what the world just taught her. While I made dinner, she said very softly, "Are we in trouble?" I swallowed the rage down like a stone. "No, baby. We're safe." Between hearings, the real proof started arriving, not all at once. Paperwork arrives the way consequences arrive, steadily, without mercy. A week later, Rebecca just sent me a message that said, "Come in, now." I sat across from her again, and she slid one page onto the desk like it was a loaded gun. "Look at the approvals column," she said. I scanned down. Signatures, initials, authorizations. And then my eyes landed on it. My mother's signature. Not once. Multiple times. My stomach dropped. I didn't hear the next sentence Rebecca said. I just stared at the ink, at the curve of my mother's handwriting, at how casually she'd signed off on it, like it was routine. I thought it was just my father, but she knew. She knew the whole time. I didn't cry. I felt steady. The next hearing felt like walking into a room where everyone already knows the secret, and you're the last one pretending it isn't there. Ms. Keller tried one last time to pivot to biology. Rebecca didn't even blink. She kept it simple. My name is on the trust. Trustees have duties, signatures prove intent, and family rumor is not a legal defense. The judge didn't give a speech. He gave a decision. I win. My share was $240,000. The court ordered my parents to pay it back plus interest, plus my legal costs, plus penalties, $368,000 total. My father looked stunned. Chelsea went stiff. My mother didn't move at all. I didn't feel victorious. I felt lighter. Not happy, just lighter. Winning in court doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like your body finally lets go of something it's been clenching for years, and then you realize you don't know how to stand without it. When I got home, Maisie was at the table doing homework, tongue sticking out in concentration like we were just a normal Tuesday family. Like a judge hadn't just put a price tag on my parents' betrayal. I tried to make dinner. I tried to act like I wasn't shaking. I tried to be the version of myself who believes closure is a real thing. Then I went into my room and saw the box. Small, plain, ugly, the paternity kit. Ms. Keller's little gotcha, mailed to me weeks ago like a dare wrapped in cardboard. Rebecca had told me, flat, firm, don't touch it. Not for court. Not for them. Don't let them drag you into the mud and call it truth. And I hadn't. I'd let paper beat rumor. I'd let ink beat cruelty. But now the case was decided, and the question was still sitting there like a live wire. I stared at it long enough to hear my father's voice in my head. Real grandkid. Real family. Real. 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 And then I thought of Maisie's knee on hardwood. I grabbed the box, not because I owed anyone proof, because I was tired of carrying doubt like it was my birthright. Inside, everything was neatly arranged. Of course it was. My father didn't just want to be right. He wanted the packaging to match. His sample was already included. That part almost made me laugh. Not funny laugh. The other kind. The kind you do when someone's audacity is so committed, it becomes art. I didn't read the instructions. I didn't light a candle. I didn't make it a moment. I swabbed, sealed, and shoved it back into the mail like I was returning something that never should have been sent. Then came the waiting. You'd think waiting would be calm after court. It wasn't. Every day I checked for updates like a compulsive habit. Every day I told myself it didn't matter. Every day it mattered anyway. Maisie kept processing in her own quiet way. The first few nights she hovered near me like she was bracing for another shove from the universe. Then one evening, as I tucked her in, she said very casually, "I don't want to go there again." No tremble. No question. A decision. And something in my chest cracked open. Pride, grief, relief, all stacked together. The email came on a Tuesday, because life loves dropping grenades into ordinary days. I opened it alone at my kitchen counter, read it once, twice, 3 times, like the words might rearrange themselves into something kinder. Biological match. I'm his daughter. My first feeling wasn't relief. It was fury so clean it made me cold. Because it meant the suspicion was wrong, and the cruelty was still deliberate. It meant they could have ended this years ago with 1 test and 1 ounce of decency. They didn't want clarity. They wanted a license. So I sent the results. To both of them. No long message. No explanation. No invitation to respond. Just, You built my whole life around a lie. Here's the truth." Then I blocked them, and I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, my doorbell rang, and I looked through the peephole and saw my mother standing there alone, hands clasped like she was about to ask for forgiveness the way you ask for a favor. Maisie was at school. Thank God. I opened the door just enough to make it clear I was listening, not welcoming. My mother's eyes were swollen, not in a dramatic way, in a tired way, like she'd been crying at the mirror and losing. She didn't start with, "I'm sorry." She started with strategy. "Your father, he's been different," she said. "He asked about Maisie." I said nothing. "He wants to see her," she rushed on. "He wants to be a family. Now that we know. Like love is a subscription that activates when the lab confirms you qualify." Then she finally cracked, and the truth came out in the only way it ever comes out after years of silence. Messy and too late. "Before you were born," she said, voice shaking, "I slept with someone else. Just once. Your father found out, or he suspected. Honestly, I don't even remember which came first anymore. But from that moment on, he decided you might not be his. And I let him treat you like a question mark because I was guilty. I thought I deserved it. And somehow, you ended up paying for it instead. I thought I was doing what I had to do," she continued. "And now we can fix it. We can—" I waited until she finished. Then I said quietly, "No." Her face tightened like she didn't understand the language. So I made it plain. "It shouldn't have mattered," I told her. "You were my mother whether I was his or not, and you chose him anyway." She tried to speak. I didn't let her. "My father doesn't get Maisie now because a test says real," I said. "You don't get to come back because the story is comfortable again." I told her the only thing she was leaving with was the knowledge that she'd been wrong. Then I closed the door. That night, Maisie asked me, steady and small, "We're not going back, right?" I sat beside her on the couch, close enough that she didn't have to be brave alone. "No," I said. "We're not." And this time it wasn't a promise. It was a boundary. 4 months later, the money hit my account. All of it. They sold the house. The one they'd owned outright. The one my father used to call his legacy. Turns out legacy doesn't mean much when a judge orders restitution and interest and fees, and there's nowhere else to pull from. The sale covered it. Every dollar that was taken. Every dollar the court added on top. When the wire cleared, I didn't cry. I didn't celebrate. I paid off what I needed to, set up Maisie's future, and closed the door on the rest. They're broke now. Not, we need to budget broke. Downsized, borrowed, quiet broke. The kind of broke where relatives stop calling and excuses stop working. We're no contact. Not the dramatic kind. The peaceful kind. Maisie laughs more. She sleeps through the night. She doesn't ask about real anymore. She knows where she belongs. I don't flinch when my phone buzzes. I don't brace myself at holidays. Our life is smaller and somehow so much bigger. They lost their money. They lost their story. They lost control. And I got my life back. So what do you think? Did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.